Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good night, wherever you are. Welcome to Speak Your Mind TV against corruption in Jamaica.
Andrew, yo, let me tell you this. Mind what you do, you know? Mind what you do. Because if you ever make America fire for Cuba, anywhere in our region or anywhere in our country, remember me tell you, any rock where you fly underneath, number one, that the Caribbean is not supposed to be a Jamaica none at all. What, the Caribbean sea not big enough? People all reports say, oh, them as a soldier up in a Blue Mountain, white soldier up in a Blue Mountain. Well, look here, Andrew, let me tell you this. Break yourself here. Can you see all of them fooling this year? In a car for. What would do you, brother? What would do you? More than give millions to line a damn pocket here, your friend them. Trying to fire for them over here, no?
I we lead the world, my lad. I bomb them bomb and sink most of the islands. And we are the baddest thing for the planet. So that's why when they do America, I hear a yard man there at the place. Tell them I go on, my friend. When they do England, I hear a yard man. What are they? It's if I hear that man say, Bomba clot! The whole place rockle. They know say yard man at the place. Allow me tell unruly.
Two things.
It's true.
Real talk,
Yeah.
Oh, the bomba clock boy, we are up with that touching that nervous. The white man is that jiggle. I said, "Lawyer, I give him his food fast. We don't want to cuss one more than bad one there. Bomba clock, national anthem. So that's I said what my fat girl name again, Rosalie. So that will. What people talk about this Rosalie like I
I'm
forget.
come off.
Yes, man.
They're not praying for Rosalie. Somebody not praying for Rosalie over here. They're not praying for Rosalie.
Yeah, give me a Rosalie. They do some things here.
Yeah.
Yeah, Isaiah, yeah. See the people, yeah, man. Send it and give people, man. Remember, and she, like I share the show to people because millions of dollars in education will go now. Yeah, so the boss just send something there. I would have just send that plane there. Cuba is a portal that Cuba, same like Port Royal is a portal that Port Royal. You remember what them define the big giant sword of a camp? Remember?
Yeah.
If you don't
Remember 7. The big giant sword.
That's a good sign, that man. Give us some more rose. How that? And stop in documents. And stop me go take it up back people. No, sir. And people from have them documents here. I have been broke. I can't hungry again. The name Nayan Kepong. What the name?
Nayan Kepong.
Nayan Kepong is the God of all gods, and the only God where the Pope of Rome prays in secret, and the only God where the Jews them pray, the Muslim them pray, and him son name Tetragrammaton. What him son name?
Tetragrammaton.
You can Google it, people, and find out. So the name Jesus now, it have power in the people, God. Them call Tetragrammaton Jesus. It have power in the people, God. Them call Tetragrammaton Jesus. You understand? Who them
I
call
know, say,
Jesus?
LA Lewis, I'm not going straight off I'm topic, but me ask an important question because most people will me share this with them want slaughter me wicked. Because me I tell enough people say the world where we live on it flat. It's not round as how they make it seem. You see me? And them want slaughter me say, oh, fuck me and chat, ray. I want you to clarify.
No, that's what I'm saying now.
So 4 Russian naval vessels, including 1 submarine, are going to be landing in Havana, Cuba, next week. Cuba's foreign ministry said that they're going to arrive somewhere between June 12th and June 17th. They also expounded upon that, stating that they were not carrying nuclear weapons and that they were no threat to the region. This announcement from Cuba came a day after U.S. officials were already aware that they were en route to the Caribbean for a naval exercise. So Cuba's foreign ministry said that the 4 ships that are coming is the frigate Gorshkov, which is this one right here, the Russian nuclear submarine Kazan, which is this right here, the fleet oil tanker Pashin, which is this, or looks like this, I believe it's the same exact one, and last but certainly not least, the salvage tug Nikolai Chikir. During their stay, they will be firing 21 salvos from one of the ships as a salute to the nation of Cuba and their partnership. This will then be reciprocated by the Cuban Revolutionary Armed Forces Artillery Unit.
Warning people of Jamaica. Say no to NIDS.
So there's something big happening to the world right now that almost no one is talking about. And I think in the long term, this is going to change the way we all live our lives. And I'm talking about digital ID.
This government will make a new free of charge digital ID mandatory for the right to work by the end of this Parliament. Let me spell that out. You will not be able to work in the United Kingdom if you do not have digital ID.
Now, it might sound like it has nothing to do with economics or finance, and maybe it sounds boring, but the truth is, this is one of the most important changes that governments are pushing right now, and it's happening almost everywhere at the exact same time. In the US, at least 25 states have already launched digital driver's license programs. That means you can now pull out your phone instead of your wallet when you check into a flight, for example. And in Europe, they passed a law last year that makes it a requirement for all member countries to roll out a national digital ID wallet by 2026. In China, they just launched their version this summer, which links it to their social credit system. Countries like South Korea, Singapore, Nigeria, the United Arab Emirates are already doing this with their digital IDs. Now, you might have heard of digital IDs before, but I don't think most people really understand what it is because it's not being debated or talked about in Congress. It's not really trending on CNBC, and most people probably don't even realize that this is actually happening. But what's interesting, though, is that the United Nations has made it one of their goals, quote, legal identity for all by 2030. And the people funding it, of course, the World Economic Forum and the World Bank. And now Europe and the US are writing all of this into law. In just the last decade, the number of national digital ID programs have doubled. Today, over 100 countries either have one or are building one right now. And when I first thought about it, at least on paper, it sounds kind of nice. It promises to cut down on fraud and make travel easier, and it onboards about 1 billion people who don't have any legal ID. But once you look into how much power this will give the governments of the world, you're going to be shocked. Once your entire identity is digital, whoever controls that ID can control a lot of power. And I don't think RFK Jr. is exaggerating when he said that this is turnkey totalitarianism.
It lays the groundwork for global medical surveillance of every human being.
So in today's video, I want to help explain exactly what this is, how it's going to work, how it's going to tie into our financial lives, and what you should be prepared for. So with that said, let's get into it. Hi, my name is Andre Jick. Hope you're doing well, cover the finance, and stay for digital IDs. So Before I get into the details of how governments are planning to roll this out, let me first explain what a digital ID actually is, because I think when most people hear that, they just imagine it's a picture of your driver's license saved to your phone. And it kind of is that, but it's also a lot more than that. So a digital ID is a secure electronic form of ID that verifies who you are. Usually it's built on top of an app on your phone, and inside that app is all your personal information, which is then verified by a trusted authority like a company or a government. But there is a big difference between the physical version and the digital one, because digital IDs use something called biometric data, which are things like your facial recognition or fingerprints, with cryptographic encryption, so they're a lot harder to fake. And once you've been verified, that ID becomes reusable. That means you don't have to keep handing over your passport or your license to different companies, or even go to the DMV. You can just share that specific piece of information that they need. So for example, if a bar needs to know that you're over 21, the app could just say, yes, this person is old enough, without necessarily revealing your exact details, your birthday, or your full ID number. So on paper, it sounds like a convenient thing to have. It's more secure, there's less information floating around, so less chance for fraud. But as you're about to find out, you're going to realize that when you centralize that much power, the question becomes, what can they do with it? Because while governments and tech companies present this as a convenient and secure thing to have, the actual way it's already being used in some countries is a very different story.
We're constantly watching and recording everything that's going on. Citizens will be on their best behavior because we're constantly recording and reporting everything that's going on.
Take China, for example. Just this summer, they launched their national digital ID app. But instead of it just being an upgrade from physical to digital, they tied it to their social credit system. That means their digital ID is not just proof of who they are, but it's also connected to things like their financial history, travel rights, and even their online activity. So what that means is, if the government doesn't like what they're doing, or doesn't like what they're saying online, or maybe what they're buying, they could restrict your ability to travel, to buy those things, or to access certain social services.
After being sued for defamation by the subject of a story he'd written, he was blacklisted. He only realized when he tried to buy a train ticket and was told he was banned from traveling.
If you didn't get a vaccine that the government mandated, sorry, you can't use public transportation.
They would immediately detect that and send you a notification, and they would deduct money from your what they call WeChat account. They use two main apps, WeChat and Alipay. So you can actually deduct your money directly from your account.
There were reports of elderly people and workers who were denied food and pensions because their fingerprint scanners stopped working. So if the system doesn't recognize you, you don't get food. That's kind of crazy.
And I have to pass facial recognition identity verification, which is insane, because all I want to do is just spend my gift card balance on this debit card.
These are real-world examples of how powerful and dangerous this can be when your whole identity is digital. And this is just scratching the surface. Before I tell you how these systems can really be abused, what I found really interesting is just how fast they're putting these systems into place. Once you start to really think about it, the same features that makes it all convenient are also the same features that will be abused for power. And here's exactly why we should be extremely concerned. Once you centralize identity into one system, yes, you do make it easier for people to prove who they are, but you also make it easier for governments and corporations and special interests to track and control people. We've already seen governments weaponize financial access against their own citizens, and you're going to see this happen in three specific areas: government power, corporate power, and surveillance. So the first example, government power. If you remember in 2022, during the Freedom Convoy protests in Canada, the government used emergency powers and ordered banks to freeze accounts linked to protesters. They targeted regular people who donated money through GoFundMe. And overnight, citizens were locked out of their own savings. There was no trials, there were no court rulings, no one was convicted of any wrongdoing. it was just because they supported the wrong cause. There was also Georgia earlier this year, where Amnesty International reported that the government froze the bank accounts of NGOs and lawyers who were providing legal aid to protesters. And their crime was offering support to people exercising their right to protest. So with the click of a button, the government just silenced people by cutting off access to their money. And under existing anti-money laundering laws, this is super easy to justify because banks are required to freeze or flag accounts that they suspect have unusual activity. But what counts as unusual activity, and who gets to decide that? That could mean transferring money to buy Bitcoin. It could mean donating to a protest movement. It could even mean participating in the boycott of a company that the government wants to protect. None of this has to be proven illegal in court. As long as they have suspicion, that is enough. And that's a very scary thing. Now, the second place you're going to see this power is corporate power. Again, Amazon and Uber and other companies are already experimenting with digital IDs. But once it becomes the standard, it will stop being just identification. It will become what some people call a super cookie, right? Like, think about how a website uses cookies to track your browsing and sell you ads, right? But now apply that across your entire identity. That opens the door to something called dynamic pricing. And that's a shareholder's dream, by the way. Here's how it's going to work. Think about how airports charge us like $20 for a sandwich or a bottle of water. Why? Because they know you're trapped. You're not going to leave the airport, get an Uber, and eat somewhere else and then come back through security. You are stuck. That is a very simple form of dynamic pricing. But imagine if that logic gets supercharged by digital IDs. Let's say your ID app shows that you just got off a 10-hour flight, right? The system knows where you've been, it knows your wallet balance, it knows you're hungry, so the algorithm decides, that person is stressed and they will probably pay more. And then boom, your sandwich is $25 instead of $12. But the person next to you might pay less just because that system thinks they're more price sensitive. They can tolerate $15, but not $1 more. Ticketmaster, for example, already uses dynamic pricing, where the same ticket can jump in price minute by minute based purely on demand. Now imagine, though, if your digital ID shows you've searched for, Taylor Swift tickets 5 times this week. The algorithm knows you are more likely to pay more, so your price gets pushed higher than someone else's. Airlines already do this. Or think about car insurance. Right now, companies use broad categories, right? But with digital ID, they could see your exact driving history, your Uber ride logs, where you hang out, all based on its ability to digitally track exactly where you are and where you've been. And you don't get to negotiate any of this because the system already knows too much about you. That's the corporate power risk. And then, of course, there's one more. The third place this power will show up in is surveillance and security. Some digital driver's license apps in the US already have what's called a phone home feature. That means every time you use your ID at a bar, at an airport, or a hotel, it pings a government database. So now, instead of just being a harmless ID, the government now has a time-stamped log of everywhere you go and everything you do in real time. If you add in central bank digital currencies on top of all that, which are already being tested, as well as an API that companies can pay to access, and it's not really that hard to imagine a programmable-like money that is tied to your biometrics. That gives the government the ability to program dollars that maybe stop working at certain stores for certain purchases, or even dollars that expire after a certain date. It's all up to their discretion. But it gets worse when you consider data breaches. India's Aadhaar system, for example, which is the biggest digital ID program in the world, has already had multiple leaks. Sensitive information from 1 billion people, including biometrics, was exposed. But here's the problem. Once your fingerprint or your facial scan or your iris is leaked or it's sold, you can't reset it like a password. It doesn't work that way. If the system is trying to protect us from fraud or illegal immigration, then the current system that we have today should be working, but it's not. So an extra layer of this identification is going to do very little to stop it.
Why do you think that them having to have a digital ID would stop that problem when right now people are meant to have a national insurance number and card, and if they're not asked for that, a boss is willing already to break the rules? What's the difference going to be?
It's exactly right. If they're not willing to ask for their current credentials, what makes them think a digital ID will do anything to change that? And he didn't really have a good answer for that because there is no good answer. So if we allow this to happen, I think it's going to fundamentally change the balance of power between people, governments, and corporations, and not for the better, unfortunately. But yes, it will be more convenient for people, as long as you don't get out of line or say something someone doesn't like.
All that digital ID will be is a means of controlling the population, of telling us what we can and can't do, of fining the innocent. And didn't we see it all when we had the pandemic, when you had to have vaccine ID to travel, to do various things? Did that stop the COVID pandemic spreading? Did it help? All it did was put cost and inconvenience on everybody else. I also worry about massive data banks being held by the government, being hacked by foreign governments, by private companies, by criminals. I do not see a single benefit to the government having digital ID other than them controlling what we do, what we spend, and where we go.
It's a crazy world we live out there, and I swear the older I get, the more I'm starting to become like that one crazy paranoid uncle. And I know how all of this sounds, and I get how it sounds like fear-mongering, but as they say...